generative AI. Some people can say that you can, it's kind of rubbing like a magic lamp and the genie appears, which can do all your work. And for others, it's like a Pandora's box that's been opened, and now you have to live with it. But if you close it, you stifle innovation. But if you just let it go rampant, maybe there are definitely ethical issues that creep up.
I think we just need to be a little bit more careful when it comes to, financial data of individuals.
Yes.
And the same thing would actually go for, I think, industries like healthcare and others, right?
In every industry, because it's not all, a field of roses. It's there are always good aspects, and then there are things which you need to be worked upon. So you should never blindly, accept everything.
I want to welcome you to the second season of Couchonomics with Arjun. Join us this season as we go beyond fintech and payments and embark on the journey into the future of financial services, a future which will be shaped by existing and new developments in technology and innovation, including and not limited to the likes of embedded finance, open banking, ESG, various versions of Metaverse, decentralized finance, digital currencies, and other trends. On the couch, we're going to have the most influential and progressive-minded founders, executives, investors, regulators, innovators, and industry commentators from across the MENA region and beyond. Join us as we unravel a multitude of layers of the financial services industry and try to learn how technology will continue to impact the world that we live in. Couchonomics with Arjun is proud to collaborate with some of the most respected and innovative names in the world of payments, fintech, and technology. Arjun is a reliable end-to-end payment solution that provides innovation and flexibility to help businesses achieve their ambition faster by turning payments into a strategic growth driver. Get everything you need with 2U, a Saudi-based super app for delivery, mobility, on-demand services, and a lot more. 2U connects you to everything you need to enrich your daily lives by building an ecosystem across its end consumers, merchants, and reps. Visa is a world leader in digital payments with a mission to connect the world through the most innovative, convenient, reliable, and secure payments network to enable individuals, businesses, and economies to thrive. Giga is a leading fintech and payment solution provider founded in Saudi Arabia, expanding rapidly across the region with established operations in UAE and Egypt. Giga's vision is to empower merchants with the tools to start, manage, and grow their business. M2P pioneers next-gen fintech through innovative offerings across payments, lending, and banking landscapes. Their comprehensive tech stack powers end-to-end banking services, BNPL, customized credit cards, prepaid cards, and more. Welcome to today's episode of Couchonomics with Arjun. I'm your host, Arjun. Joining me today on the couch is Amna Usman Chaudhry. Amna is a financial economist and strategist with organizations like the UNICEF, where she's working on a range of emerging technologies, including and not limited to the likes of blockchain, Web3, AI, generative AI, and so on and so forth. Amna has previously been listed on the Women in FinTech Power List by Innovate Finance. So with that, I'd like to welcome Amna to the couch.
Hi, Arjun. Thank you. Great to be here.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Is the couch comfortable?
I am sure. It's great. It's very comfortable. Thank you.
Now, we're going to have a good 45-minute conversation. And as I said before the show started, try and have some fun. Let's dive straight in, right? The word emerging technologies 20 years ago would have meant a couple of things. Today, it means so many things, right? So my question to you, and straight off, is which emerging technologies, according to you, will impact both commerce, but arguably more importantly, the society that we live in the most in the coming decade?
I think that's a very interesting question, Arjun, because we are currently in the middle of a fourth industrial revolution. So, as you know, the first industrial revolution happened in 1780s with the advent of the steam engine. And then you had the second industrial revolution around 1870s when there was electricity and mass production. Then we went on in the 1960s, late 1969, 1970, we had IT, automation, so the third industrial revolution. And now, according to the World Economic Forum, we are in the midst of a fourth industrial revolution where there are so many emerging technologies. And unlike the previous, revolutions when everything was going on a linear pace, now everything is accelerating exponentially. So there are a lot of emerging technologies that can have a big impact on commerce and society as a whole in the future decade. So I think the ones that I am personally most excited about is blockchain, for example, and because of it has already made a big dent in society in a positive way because of its benefits of transparency, immutability, decentralization. You have NFTs in blockchain, DeFi, decentralized finance. So a whole list of technologies embedded in that, cryptocurrencies, etc. And then you have Web3 as well, which is something also which I really believe in. So Web3 was initially a term that was coined by Gavin Wood, one of the co-founders of Ethereum, who's also the founder of Parity Technologies, Polkadot. And what he meant by Web3 was a more decentralized and democratic version of the internet. So Web3, I see extended reality, the metaverse, which I'll try to not use as much like Apple didn't use. I'll try to just go with extended reality. But these technologies will go on to create a more immersive experience where physical and digital lines blur. And one specifically when we are speaking about blockchain and Web3, one very interesting thing that's going to come up in the next decade is DePIN, which is decentralized physical infrastructure.
Okay.
So this is something relatively new. It was actually coined, the word DePIN was actually decided by Masari in November 2022. So it's a relatively new term, but the concept has been there for a while now. So the concept is decentralized physical infrastructure where you have these towers, for example, 5G networks. We have 6G coming up. So previously, these were very centralized. But now, because of blockchain and tokenization, you can have decentralized physical infrastructures. And that will definitely impact society by removing centralization. And yes, and one more thing, since we're talking about impact society and e-commerce, we can't forget artificial intelligence and specifically generative AI, which I think since ChatGPT was released on 30th November 2022, it has created immense ripples in society as a whole. So yes, these are the technologies which I think we can really benefit society as a whole.
Right. So, okay. So we've had a few guests who've had a go at Web3, blockchain, metaverse. I'm not smart and informed enough to ask you anything which is remotely intelligent on DeepIn, right? One topic I do want to have a bit of a dialogue on is this craze around generative AI. Right. So for the audience, and I'm sure everybody can sort of Google this question and get an answer very straightforward. Well, get an answer in a straightforward manner. Right. What is so different about generative AI versus all the other forms of AI which have existed for decades? Right. We've been using some form of machine learning and AI for quite a long time. Right. And the second part to that question is, I'm sure you'll explain us about all the large language models and so on and so forth. Why this craze, right, which has just engulfed all of us?
So, great question, Arjun. The generative AI differs from artificial intelligence because it has created a whole new creator economy. So, artificial intelligence is a field that has been here with us since 1950s. And we know that, for traditional artificial intelligence, it was restricted to a few people who did their PhDs and had to take a lot of studies, etc. And what differs generative AI from traditional artificial intelligence is that now generative AI can generate new content. So previously, in a traditional artificial intelligence could analyze data, it could make interpretations, but it couldn't generate new forms of data. So this is why it's very exciting that with generative AI, we have generation of new content which has never been there before, such as art, you have music, you have videos, etc. And the reason that it has taken the society by storm is, first of all, that traditional AI was restricted to only those people who studied it, who, it was very technical, etc. You had to go through a lot of courses and understanding, no coding to understand it. But generative AI, regardless of your education, regardless of your education level, regardless of your industry, you can now access it. So, and it's really exciting because I've seen children, maybe 10-year-olds, they can enjoy generative AI, whether creatively or for studying.
I'm not quite sure they're enjoying it. I think they're using it to finish homework.
Yes, but the artistic types, they're definitely enjoying it as well. And then you also have older people who can use their generative AI, Chat GPT, Mid Journey, etc., to create stuff. So there's people who are specialized in arts, for example. They can co-create with it. Musicians can utilize it to generate new content, which they can collaborate with. So this is something that is there for everyone to tap into, and I think that's what's.
But so Amna, let me try and paint a picture which is, I guess, not as rosy, right? So, at what stage does co-creation become replacement?
I think that's a very interesting question. So it's not necessarily about replacement because OpenAI, one of the major companies behind the likes of Chat GPT, all these transformer models. So it did a study and said that instead of replacing jobs, it can actually enhance 80% of the jobs that exist today. And of course, with the advancement of technology, we've seen, I just spoke about the different industrial revolutions. I'm sure when the steam engine came, there was loss of job. When there was, at all these different phases, there are loss of jobs, but there is also creation of new jobs. And creation of new opportunities which were not existing before. So a lot of opportunities in whether it's job, whether it's creativity, etc., that exist today at one point of time were not there. And a lot of opportunities and things that existed at one point of the time don't exist today. So
No, I agree with you, right? And again, I don't want to labor the point. I'll tell you. So you made the point in terms of linearity of the disruption which took place in the earlier revolutions
definitely.
compared to now. I think the way I feel, and maybe it's just a reflection of my age rather than anything else, is that it feels like these things are coming on at a speed which is so fast that A, you can't brace yourself for it. B, you cannot go through the process of self-invention, right? Which I think if you went back 100, 200, 300 years ago, I think technologies crept up on you at a pace which gave you the option to reinvent, to upskill, to reskill, right? Here it feels like 15 minutes later, right? People in particular industries could be sitting there going, we're really not required because, using these large language models, you can actually infer data through large, copious amounts of I guess, data sources into something very succinct. So there's a whole plethora of people who would be doing that as a job, and their jobs are arguably at risk now in a very, very short period of time. And there isn't enough, in my humble opinion, educational material out there to retrain, reskill, and upskill these individuals so that they can become co-creators. But in any case, I just want to make that point. I think this was just me getting it off my shelf, off my chest, because I do believe that yes, in the longer period of time, all these new technologies will generate new roles, right? Without doubt. But I think in a short term, they actually could be very painful.
I actually disagree politely.
No, please.
Yes, because all these in the short term, they actually enhance jobs, and then they enhance your job. For example, if you have to do, there's a website for, there's a generative AI application for so many things now. So that enhances your productivity to a level that you actually have more time to do the stuff that is more important. And that includes a lot of leftover time to upskill. So speaking of, lack of education resources, there are so many resources available now, which maybe 100 years ago, etc., you would have to pay a lot of money, etc., to buy. So you have, Google has released a huge list of, courses. You have LinkedIn Learning, you have deep learning, you have these free models such as Coursera, edX, and there are a lot of good courses over there with which you can upskill from all the time that you've saved doing, laborious things. And I think the most exciting part is that the cost of doing business, for example, has really decreased. So for once, maybe a few years past, you would need to have a significant amount of capital. And I'm not saying that you don't need, depending on the industry and the business that you're starting, you don't need capital. But now you have so many things which can be done via generative AI. There are examples of people who are making quite a decent living using these models. So you have, for example, you can build a website almost instantaneously. You have, so many, you can make logos via, for example, Midjourney and all these. So there are a lot of, you can create content. You have your own assistants, Jasper AI, you have your assistant if you want to create content that can help. You have ChatGPT, which I think is the most widely used generative AI. You can create spreadsheets, for example.
The use cases are tremendous, right?
Yes.
I think where, and we need to move on to the next question. I think where I slightly beg to differ from a number of people is, don't get me wrong, I'm very enthusiastic about all of this stuff, right? Notwithstanding that, I sometimes feel that all these educational courses out there are great, but they're actually self-educational, which carries 2 or 3 inherent challenges. 2 which come straight to my mind is, 1, are we capable enough to self-educate ourselves, especially guys like me who are inherently lazy, right? And secondly, do we actually even have the foundational skills to train ourselves or not? But in any case, we'll take that discussion on a separate show. I know that you completely disagree with me on that, but it's healthy to disagree. Let's talk about generative AI and financial services, right? I specifically want to ask you a question. Financial services tends to be sort of impacted by technologies increasingly, right? You mentioned blockchain a few moments ago. From a generative AI perspective, right, what use cases are you seeing out there? What examples are you seeing out there?
So I personally think, there are so many industries that are going to be disrupted by generative AI, and that can be used very positively. There's a thing called structured disruption, that with proper strategy and foresight, you can actually use that as an advantage and leap forward in ways which you could not before these advents of technology such as generative AI. So there's a huge opportunity, and there are a lot of people who are in the financial services utilizing this. So for example, let's start from the very basics. even with ChatGPT, you have your own personal financial advisor. You have these. There's a generative AI app called Parthian AI, and what it does is that it has been trained to provide financial advice. So whether it's regarding your mortgage, whether it's regarding something like savings, even capital management, etc. It can help you. You just provide it with the questions, and it can help with that. And in specifically with generative AI, the GANs, which are generative adversarial networks, are very helpful. So without going into the technicalities, they can be used to create synthetic data. And this synthetic data, without utilizing without compromising the privacy, etc., of accounts, can be used to train models and detect fraud, can be used to detect anomalies. And this has actually been used, not exactly in but in financial services. It has also been used. Now, with generative AI, we also have variational autoencoders, which are a type of generative AI in which you train the generative AI with normal data.
Yep.
And then what you do is the variational autoencoder can find anomalies or outliers from the normal. So it can detect fraud or anything that is not normal. So that is being used by, for example, Uber in their financial services to detect anomalies and prevent fraud. And it's also being used by Google for even network protection of their financial services. So there's a lot of ways that these generative AI can impact financial services and are being used. So it can impact, for example, we already mentioned your own personal financial advisors, credit management, fraud detection, and insurance. So there's a whole group. And I would say that because generative AI models tend to hallucinate, you shouldn't always, and hallucinate, for those who don't know, they tend to sometimes advise in a way which seems very, it's an actual, which seems very believable, but it's actually a made up fact. So it's always good to double check as well. Don't go blindly with what's being told. But that is something that is being worked on. So in the future, it will have even more impact.
And you raised one of my biggest concern,
Yes.
which is hallucination of the generative AI responses, right? Financial services or fintech is a very precise industry, if I may say, right? Invariably, there's a right and a wrong answer, right? Because it's number driven. That is definitely a worrisome thought in terms of, how rapidly can generative AI be used across what I call, the spectrum of important KPIs, which is, how do we reduce our cost of acquisition of customers? How do we underwrite customers more effectively, right? How do we reduce our cost to serve? And most importantly, how do we get our cost of capital down? And I personally think generative AI will have use cases, right, over a period of time, which will impact all of these KPIs in different terms. But I do think there is a bit of a way to go, right? Mm-hmm. I think we might be getting a bit ahead of ourselves in certain cases, so we've got to be careful. Let me try and bring some convergence into it, right? So you obviously enjoy the topic of Web3 and blockchain.
Yes.
Right.
But can I just, before?
Sure.
Yeah, because hallucinations, because you mentioned that it's sensitive data, and sometimes, when it gives advice such as how to save credit, etc., it's better to have this in mind, even though it's not number driven. And that is why there are, these organizations, reputed organizations who are working with it, and then they can learn the mistakes and then implement them. But yes, we still have a way to go, but it is definitely something that is...
No, without doubt, I think there'll be organizations which will actually solve for this, right?
Yeah.
I think recognition is the first part of solving anything. I think that was the point I was trying to make by saying that I think we just need to be a little bit more careful when it comes to, financial data of individuals.
Yes.
And then same thing would actually go for, I think, industries like healthcare and others, right?
In every industry, because it's not all, a field of roses. It's there are always good aspects, and then there are things which you need to be worked upon. So you should never blindly, accept everything. You should always do your own research. However, it will definitely enhance productivity, and models such as Bloomberg's GPT can definitely enhance the financial sector.
See, I'm going to slowly take you to convincing that it will lead to job losses, but it's all right. I'll leave for the next 30 minutes to convince you.
I think World Economic Forum's Future of Jobs report 2023 said that generative AI will actually create 69 million more jobs in the future. There will be job losses as well,
Right.
but it will also create.
So I hope I'm one of the 69 million job categories, right? Because I can actually see that content writing, right? You could practically replace the human being, right? Or reduce the role. Now, you could argue that frees up so much more time, Arjun, for you to do other things, right? That's provided I have other things to do, right? I actually have a spin-off out of my Couchonomics sort of play, which is called Couchonomics Reels, where what we do is we give a 90-second snapshot on a particular industry and interesting events that happen in that industry, right? All our content generation, which is text to voice, right, is AI. So it's a model which is being trained, right? Actually, it's got a better accent than I do, right? And all the imagery is also AI generated, because the number of the news items don't naturally have any imagery. So you've got to create one. Now, if we keep taking this forward, right, we're only taking baby steps, I can see very quickly that my role will be nothing more than actually identifying an already shortlisted set of news events in a particular sector which took place in the last 7 days. So
no, but you can be creative with it as well. For example, you had that very interesting content in which ChatGPT was talking with a male version of ChatGPT, and a female version of ChatGPT were having a conversation with blockchain and AI. So there can always be creative, but I totally understand your point.
Well, I'm becoming a very good prompter then, if that's what you mean.
I mean, prompt engineering didn't exist a few years back, right? So.
I wouldn't call what I do prompt engineering. I think I'm just getting better at prompting, because I think I just find it amusing. I'll be honest with you. For me, it's turned out to be one of the most rapid way to educate myself on a topic, right? To a level of depth that I feel is necessary, right?
Yes.
In terms of not sounding completely foolish when I sit in front of people like you who know the topic, right? So I think it's been interesting. I have a creative side to it, so I do try my hand at Midjourney and a number of other sort of AI tools which help you generate pictures and artwork. It's fascinating. So it's you realize an hour of your day is gone, producing pictures which are of no use to anybody else, including your own avatars, which for the initial few months when it first came, that was kind of the favorite gig between me and my two daughters. We would try the avatar things. No, it's kind of fascinating. Coming back to the conversations of emerging technologies, let's talk about the convergence of two, right? Web3 and Gen AI, right? So how do you see both of them come together?
So this is very exciting. Generative AI can really enhance Web3, and there are some aspects of Web3 that can enhance generative AI as well. So, for example, generative AI is very centralized. So there are a few organizations in certain parts of the world, so it's very centralized. So with blockchain, for example, and Web3, it can be more decentralized, it can be more democratic. So that is there. And generative AI with a blockchain and Web3 can really help, since blockchain is a vital component of Web3, can really help with generating for example, smart contracts, which is the code for blockchain. And it's very important that you not just generate the code, but you also audit it. So they can help with anomaly detection of smart contracts. For example, we had this a DAO in 2016, which was the first DAO on the Ethereum network, Genesis DAO, now known as the DAO. So in May of 2016, it raised around 11.5 million Ethereum, which I don't even know, like in nowadays is a very significant amount of money. So just it was open source, and the smart contract was done by a company called Slockit, and the auditing was not done properly. So in June, it was hacked, and all the majority of the money was drained. And if the smart contract had been audited properly, this could have been prevented, and it actually led to the hard fork of Ethereum as well. But that can be a tedious process, and generative AI can definitely help in finding anomalies in smart contracts and in creation of blockchain as well. For example, there are so many generative AI applications that can help developers, not just in blockchain, but generally. You have Microsoft's GitHub's Copilot, you have Codex by OpenAI, you have Code Whisperer by Amazon Web Services. So there's a lot of development taking place. So that can really enhance the security of blockchain. Again, talking about the security of blockchain, blockchain can enhance the security of generative AI as well. So if there's any data that requires more security, etc., and decentralization, it can be stored on the blockchain. So that is there as well. And I think these can work hand in hand in convergence.
And you're already seeing evidence of this happening, right?
Yes, I mean, there are evidence of this happening specifically with smart contract auditing and generation.
So you're only going to see these scale.
Yes.
And so on and so forth. No, I agree with you. I think there is, for the little I have read, I think there is, blockchain and generative AI or Web3 and generative AI is not an either or answer. I think it's an and answer. It's about how do we actually combine. And that actually sits true for a number of emerging technologies which are coming together, right? There is like a perfect storm if you put all of these things together, right?
Yes.
And I don't mean the storm in the negative sense, right?
No, I totally understand.
So let's go back a step, right? You raised a certain concerns, right? So two-part questions. What are the real risks and challenges? And I don't need you to give me the whole list of 200 things which are the risks and challenges with generative AI. But in your mind, what are the top sort of 2 or 3 challenges that exist? That's the first part of my question. The second part of my question is, and maybe I'm sort of reading this wrong, but there seems to be sort of 2 schools of thought emerging. One is basically saying that the speed at which generative AI is being adopted, developed, needs to be sort of slowed down a bit, right? Elon Musk went on record to say it. Now, I don't know if he meant that or if he just wanted to say it, because half the time you do not know what Elon Musk wants to say and is saying, right? And then the other school of thought is saying, no, let this push through, and we just need to, rapidly keep pace, whether from a regulatory perspective, whether from an adoption perspective, so on and so forth. So first part of your questions, what are the top 3 risks and issues? Secondly, where do you sit on this? Should we slow down? Should we let it run as fast as it can?
Yeah, very interesting questions. And, as you were speaking, I was thinking of more use cases of blockchain and generative AI, for example, NFTs, etc., creation of NFTs, via generative AI, decentralized marketplaces. But let's move on to this question. There are a lot of risks as well. So I think one particular risk that stands out is the biases that exist in generative AI. I think that is something that is very important. So, and these biases exist because the generative AI and AI models have all been trained on data from society, which already had these biases. So from one phase to the next, but those need to be addressed, and those can be addressed. For example, there are ways to address those there's this in AI, you have these reinforcement learning with human feedback.
Okay.
So what you do is that with human feedback, the generative AI model can depict the biases that exist. So for example, if you think of, if you ask the generative AI model to choose a basketball team, there would be certain classification, probably African Americans that it would prefer more, and maybe that can be one bias, and maybe for another sport it can be a separate ethnicity, etc. There can be gender biases. So these can be addressed via human feedback. So that is something that's working to address these biases. But we still have a long way to go. The second issue that comes up is the issue of deep fakes. So you must have seen, I think it went very popular. There was a picture a few weeks ago of the Pope wearing I think Balenciaga, a designer jacket, and walking around. And there was also a picture of the Pentagon blowing up. So these two pictures went viral. Okay, so they were viral on Twitter for those, at least in emerging tech space. So they were so realistic, and it's very difficult to understand and differentiate deep fakes from actual, what is real, what is wrong. So this needs to be addressed. And there are organizations, etc., that are looking into it. So I think these are the biases, deep fakes, and then the hallucinations, which I mentioned, which is a proper term in AI, which addresses, in generative AI, which addresses the made-up facts delivered in such a natural manner that you can't tell whether it's real or not. So, if you ask ChatGPT to write you, tell you about a historian, for example, maybe it tells some wrong facts inside that answer, but you don't detect it because it's so naturally, and some of the facts are true, so you assume that all of it is true. So those are, I think...
Sounds more and more like the history answers I used to give. But that's all right.
Yes, we've all given, wrong answers. But yeah, so those are... And the second part of your question was the
speed at which generative AI is, I guess, entering the world of commerce and society. Mm-hmm. Should it slow down?
Oh, yes, the Elon Musk. So, yes, Elon Musk and a few, people did say that it should be paused. But, a few months or weeks later, he did come up with a new generative AI startup as well. So you have to
pause till I catch up.
Exactly.
Okay. Right. Okay.
So you have to kind of question the intentions there. I think generative AI is moving very fast, as is a lot of emerging technologies, but specifically generative AI. Some people can say that it's kind of rubbing like a magic lamp and the genie appears, which can do all your work. And for others, it's like a Pandora's box that's been opened, and now you have to live with it. But there's a fine line, and that is being addressed, I think, by regulators. And that is, if you close it, you stifle innovation. But if you just let it go rampant, maybe there are definitely ethical issues that creep up. For example, using products which are copyrighted, etc., and all the other three main issues that I highlighted. So it's a fine line that I think regulators have to decide, and they are working on it. Although it's not going to be something so simple. So it's
how do you regulate something which is moving so fast?
That is the problem, right?
Do the regulators have the collective capabilities? And this is by no means me being negative at them.
No,
we still hear capital hearings in the US where we're talking about the internet and data privacy, which have existed for 20 years, if not longer.
Yes.
And we still have no solves for it, right?
Yeah.
Or at least we don't have any definitive solves for it. So how do you expect the regulator to, and again, this is a loaded question, apologies.
I think, no, this is really great that you brought this up, because if we see that with emerging technologies, regulators don't understand. We've seen that with blockchain, some of the regulations that took so long to come up with. Although I would say that ideally decentralization shouldn't be regulated, but going back to
Decentralization should be regulated.
shouldn't be.
So we have a regulated, decentralized world. But I do think that's kind of what's going to happen.
Because we are not in Web 3, we are in Web 2.5. But what I was
But
going
will
to...
we ever get to Web 3? Sorry, I'm gonna move to this. I think Web 3 to me is more like a state of mind. It's like a transition. I don't think it's a destination.
I think it is a journey that you eventually reach.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, but is it a destination?
It is an ideology.
It is an ideology.
It is an ideology.
Right.
And it is something that that will happen, maybe not in the next decade, but eventually it is something that society will slowly move forward to. Because more people...
A more decentralized
more
society,
decentralized.
which is centralized at some level of abstraction. Right? So it'll make you
It's
feel...
going to be a dance between centralization and decentralization.
It's going to make
for
you
a while.
feel like you live in a free world without living in a free world. Right? Okay, I'm sorry I'm being a bit cynical. It's that time of the day.
No, but with regulation, going back, it's a very important point, because respectfully, the wrong people can be said to make regulations. People who should be making AI regulations are those who understand AI, and that should not be only people from a certain company, for example, Microsoft, etc., or OpenAI, etc. Because if I'm working for a company and I know if I regulate it, it will stifle the profits, etc., I would not make regulation as I would.
We see that all the time happening in financial services.
It does. So that is what we should do. We should have a super, experts from every, a balanced set of experts, not just from one company, but from all over, sitting with regulators and making the regulation while understanding. So,
you are a dreamer, aren't you?
I am a dreamer, but a lot of these things do actually,
It takes too long. It takes quite a lot of time.
But we have a lot of regulations. There's 50 countries in the world who are working right now with their AI strategies, and these are taking place. I mean, we have the EU Act, AI Act. US is in the process of making these acts. The issue is that having the right people who understand creativity, innovation, and the risks involved. Maybe a bit out of line here is there's like a ethical philosophy of John Rawls. So he wrote a book, Theory of Justice, in which he brought up this concept of veil of ignorance. And that veil of ignorance is that you should make regulation when you're, making any, it was on social justice, but I'm bringing it into AI. So when you're making, for example, AI regulations, you should put a veil of ignorance. You should forget whether you're, your race, whether you're privileged in the society, whatever, and you should make the regulations in a way that it impacts in a positive way. It lifts up the least compromised person of the society, and we want to do that. So when you do that, you can understand the risks involved and the advantages and
the opportunities that exist.
Yes, it is a philosophy, but it is something that eventually, if taken seriously, can make a better.
So I've got a few last questions to ask because I'm conscious of time, right? So barriers of adoption, right? What do you see as some of the biggest barriers of adoption of a regulated generative AI world?
I think one of the biggest barriers is lack of education. So there is a tech barrier, believe it or not, in generative AI as well. So for example, ChatGPT is something that everyone has used. So maybe apart from that, it reached 1 million users in 5 days to a week. So apart from that, even generative AI apps, which are very, very simple to use, such as Midjourney. Like I personally was speaking to someone a few weeks back, very educated, great job. And she was telling me she's only used ChatGPT and maybe,
I struggled with Midjourney initially.
yeah.
Using Discord, finding your way through it. It wasn't easy. My prompts were completely off, right? It took me weeks to get that right. So there are some tools which are easier than the others. The Midjourney tools are not as easy. So yes, I think there is an education, training, learning gap.
Yes.
Right? But that must exist en masse when you actually go to the wider population, because yes, you got 1 million users in 5 days. That's awesome, and 100 million in whatever a few weeks after that, right? But we're talking about a world where there are 7 billion people, right? And I'm not suggesting all 7 billion have to use it, but a vast majority of them want to use a technology which is widely applicable. I do understand that. I think it is an educational challenge. I actually think it'll become a part of curriculum very, very soon in schools at all level, right? Because I think, as you said, teachers are going to use this for getting more efficient. Students will get more, get useful for getting more. To me, it's a little bit like the calculator, right? When it sort of first came, there was no reason for all of us to learn every timetables. But, I don't know, for some bizarre reason, we in our school were always learning the hardest timetables you could. Never had to use it. I guess it trained my brain in a particular manner, but that was good. Second question, right? So, we talked a little bit about digital identity and privacy, right? So again, my question is, how do technologies such as blockchain, generative AI shape the future of sort of the future of the internet, right? And specifically in terms of the digital identity and privacy issues.
So blockchain is really great for digital identity because it gives you ownership of your digital identity. And basically, previously you had these organizations, etc., that had your data, and now you can control your own data and even monetize it if need be. So because of blockchain, your digital identity is more secure, etc. So since you brought up, Arjun, this example of digital identity, there's a very interesting project called WorldCoin on blockchain, and the link in generative AI is that Sam Altman, is also involved in it, and it's really interesting because it wants to create a decentralized digital identity network where if you join the network, and you can prove your uniqueness by having your eye retina scanned. You are awarded certain number of digital tokens, and then you prove that you're a unique individual, and it's supposed to launch in the early part of 2023.
And this digital identity that you're going to create for yourself, which is on the blockchain, will hopefully foreseeably in the future be used for a number of use cases.
Yes,
otherwise, what's the
provides.
incentive?
Yes, right. It's a decentralized digital identity network, and it's being backed by some of the top, firms such as A16Z Crypto, etc. And this is just for educational purposes, of course. But these, the blockchain can really put the power back into your own hands of having your own digital identity. And that's basically the point I wanted to make. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Sustainability, climate change, right? Are these new technologies just make the situation worse?
I mean, technology can be used to enhance the situation, find solutions, but it can also be used negatively. So it depends who's using it. But I think there's a great potential in emerging technologies such as the ones we have been discussing today, blockchain, Web3, etc., to have a positive impact on sustainability. And take the example of blockchain. Yes, there are some blockchains which are energy intensive because of the consensus mechanism they use, the proof of work mechanism. But there are also blockchains such as Ethereum, Algorand, Tezos, etc. There's a lot of blockchains also which are more environmentally friendly. And you can pivot as well. For example, Ethereum, when it shifted from proof of work to proof of stake, it cut down energy by 99.9%. So these that's something that can be looked into. And if you go into something that is energy intensive, such as proof of work, you can make sure that the energy that you're getting is from green and recycled resources. So that is something that it can be looked into. There are a lot of projects also in blockchain that help with sustainability. So, you have Plastic Bank, which is such a, project that I've admired for a long time, where you on the blockchain are rewarded for recycling, picking up plastic, etc., and has been used to positively impact and decrease plastic pollution in the world. I think they have, I don't know exact figures, but they have collected from their project, Plastic Bank, hundreds and thousands of kilograms of plastic bottle, plastic trash. And the thing about blockchain that is also interesting and with sustainability aspect is the tokenization aspect of blockchain. So there's a project in blockchain called a Power Ledger, which is also something that I've been following for some time. So sometimes, your house has more electricity than it needs. So it can take the extra electricity, tokenize it, and transmit or even sell it to houses which do not have the same amount of electricity. So conservation of energy over there.
Where's this happening?
It's primarily based in Australia,
Okay.
but it's being implemented slowly in different parts of the world. But
So it is actually already going
it
global.
is. It's been going for quite some years. It's a very successful project, actually. Yes.
That's actually interesting.
Yeah. So yes, and since we spoke about metaverse as well, extended reality, it can really help with sustainability as well. I mean, before COVID, 2.5% of global emissions were from airplane flights. So with metaverse, specifically realistic metaverses, such as we have seen with at the Dubai Metaverse Assembly, we saw with the Department of the Dubai governments, where you can actually meet and you can sign contracts as if you are there in real life. That can really decrease the need of business travel. So cut down these emissions. There was a study done by Ernst & Young which said that digital twin technology can reduce carbon emissions by up to 50% for buildings, and in real estate alone, it can reduce by 35% if you use digital twin technology. And let's see, if we go over to like fashion versus digital fashion, it's amazing. Like I know that if you of course decrease the physical clothing and do the just digital, that's obviously going to impact. But even if you keep the physical fashion line, etc., and just decrease the samples and the designing part of it, you save 30% in carbon emissions.
I can see
a
future of hobos walking down the street, but their digital avatars are superbly well dressed, right?
Yes.
Okay, I can't because that's where we'll be socially interacting too, right? So we can all dress up as hobos and never shower again. Right?
It's not about hobos, just the production, the
No, I get
designing,
what
sampling side.
No, I do.
Yes.
I do, but
and this is fast fashion. It's very different from quality fashion.
I actually come from a family of fashion. That's what my parents did for years and years. So I understand where the savings could be, because there is so much wastage in the whole early design stage before even things get into production.
Yes, the samples and everything.
Yeah,
yes.
it is. So I see the advantage. Where again, I think my question mark is that I think there's some very juicy numbers out there in terms of what these emerging technologies can deliver in terms of sustainability.
Yeah, but these are not juicy. They're actual facts, like by well-known organizations
No, I
such as
totally agree with you.
yeah.
I don't question the size of the opportunity.
Yes.
I always question the size of what we achieve.
Yes.
Right. That's my entire question is, are we going to move fast enough towards achieving some of those goals? Right. So for example, I'm a big proponent who believes that the world's climate is changing. Right. So there are lots of skeptics. Right.
Yeah.
But it still takes moving a mountain to get people to get consensus on doing things, right? Whether those are emerging nations or whether they are, slightly more developed ones. So again, not being cynical, I'm just a more pragmatic sort of human being, right? And maybe because I've seen the movie so many times, I do get a bit jaded when big numbers are out there, but then you don't see the materiality and the impact. Moving on with the questions, right? So, last question. Right, I've kept you on the couch for an hour.
No,
Okay,
I'm enjoying it.
right. As an expert, right, and you cannot use the word blockchain and AI again, right? Okay, which emerging technologies do you see to be the most exciting, slightly ahead of time? So let's go a bit beyond 10 years, which is at a very, very early stage and nascent stage. I know you mentioned one around deep in. What else similar to deep in is sort of creeping in the outer world right now?
So that's a very interesting question. I think there are technologies such as quantum computing that is going to have a big impact.
Profound impact, at least in financial services.
Yes.
I've been reading up on it. It is well, if it does play out the way
No, it is definitely playing out. I had the opportunity to visit one of the supercomputing centers and it's amazing, yeah. And the amount, it's actually going to be something to be very careful of. So keep an eye on. So yeah, that can definitely something to watch if I'm not going to be talking about blockchain and generative AI and Web3. So yes.
So let me ask you this question around the metaverse, right? And with Apple's recent sort of, I don't know, $3,500, that's going to be an Apple product I don't think I can afford to buy. Will the metaverse in the foreseeable future extend beyond some of the use cases such as entertainment, fashion, I guess communities, to other sectors? Do you actually see any viability of the metaverse in financial services in real term? Because we've really not seen any good use cases yet, right? What's going to change?
I think there is a huge impact that the metaverse is going to have in industries apart from social, etc. And that we can see, for example, I discussed one basic example is even in financial services.
You can sign contracts where you're sitting together.
Yeah, so that does impact things such as mental health, sustainability. Sometimes in jobs you have to travel a lot, etc. So Apple really brought a new era of spatial computing, which they as you saw, they didn't their reveal was very exciting. I'm glad they lived up to the expectations, because I remember there were watch parties being held and there was so much excitement. And I remember just 15 minutes before the reveal, I was like, I hope they live up to everyone's expectation, and they did. But basically spatial computing utilizes technologies such as extended reality, augmented mixed reality, which encompasses what the metaverse is in a way. So without even bringing the word metaverse, they do kind of encompass that. And we saw that the metaverse technology can have a big impact in terms of work life and interacting with people in a realistic way. And in terms of smart cities, it can play a big role as well. So, for example, in Singapore, we are using. I mean, we already, everyone knows the example of Dubai using the metaverse technology, but in Singapore we are utilizing they're utilizing digital twin infrastructure to help with traffic, with planning, etc. It's being used in Boston as well to plan better city by the Boston Road planning agency. It's being used in Middle East a lot as well. So there are aspects which are going to, a lot of aspects apart from socializing
No, I
with
agree. I
metaverse.
think digital twin is one which I should have mentioned straight away. Um, and those have existed, right? There have been airports which have been using digital twins for quite a long time, even when the so-called spatial computing technology was not up to the mark, right? Um, I still remain again cautious about how much of an impact will the metaverse have beyond some of these use cases that you've mentioned, right? One of the things I find quite funny, and I think we'll end on this note, is that number of banks have gone and built branches in
Yes.
in the metaverse, and I'm responding to saying people don't want to go to your branches in the real verse. Why will they actually go to you in the metaverse, right? Because unless and until the experience is completely different, the speed of customer service is better, et cetera, why would encourage people to go to a destination which they're already walking away from?
So that is where extended reality, instead of just focusing on virtual reality, comes into play. So it can really enhance. And you mentioned that there's a lot of not a lot of use cases of metaverse, but according to Gartner, the metaverse won't mature until 2030. So
Yeah, are we ever going to have a metaverse? Because aren't we just going to have lots and lots of proto metaverses and then some level of interoperability?
I mean, we already have started having interoperability between different metaverses, so that's great. But I think metaverse, there's no one definition of metaverse, but basically, like there's one internet, you have different websites and you can go. So there's one metaverse, and then you have these metaverse platforms. So that is my interpretation. And then you can go to these different metaverse platforms and spatial, Decentraland, etc. And it will become more decentralized as well. There's like in a Venn diagram, an overlay between metaverse and Web3 technologies.
Oh, that's very obvious.
Yes.
That's very obvious because blockchain underpins
So
a lot of that.
with Web3, it would be more immersive, creating the metaverse as well. Yes.
Amna, thanks a lot.
Thank you, Arjun.
I hope it was bearable.
It was. I really enjoyed it. Thank you for having me.
It was a bit of a free-flowing conversation, which I think these are the ones which are the best to have. I'm sure the listeners will learn a lot. I've learned a few things. I've actually also picked up a couple of books that I need to go and read.
You have a great book collection. I remember, there's a great book for economics and some of the books.
Well, actually, it's a book which, how do I say, inspired the name of the podcast.
It's a great book.
Couchonomics actually came out of Economics.
Ah.
So yes, it is one of my favorite books. I've read it too often, actually. I should start reading some other books for a change. But no, thank you for coming. Appreciate you making the time and joining me this late in the evening in the studio. You have a good day.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure being here, and I really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you, Arjun.
Thank you. So that was Amna. And the future is full of Web3, blockchain, generative AI, quantum computing, deep, I forget whatever that word was. Deep in. So, all of you need to sort of get on your skates, buy all these books, all these free courses or paid courses, and get yourself upskilled or reskilled, or else you're all going to get worrisome, sleepless nights like I do. With regards to what's going to happen to all of us. Are we going to all be replaced by robotics of some sort who are smarter, faster, quicker, more efficient than us? So with that, goodbye, and till next week.